So we have with us tonight, we have Ken, is it Teeter?
Peter, correct.
Yeah, it's an engineer from the village of Aurora. And we have um, uh, Rob Thurston, is the mayor of Union Springs, and Jim Orman. And boy, are you also with Aurora?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Ken
You
and
know,
I work. Ken and I work shoulder to shoulder.
okay, so you're the mayor of Aurora. I apologize. I should know that.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay, so those are our speakers. Don Wilson from Cayuga had hoped to come, but his work schedule just didn't allow it. Um, so, Ken, I wrote you down first on my list of names. So do you want to kick it off by talking about some things in Aurora?
That is no problem.
Thank you.
I, am most familiar with certainly the potable water supply, and that's been really the focus for most everything we've been doing dealing with for the past year. So, and again, I suspect many of you are familiar with some of the basics. But what I guess I thought might be appropriate would be to give you a little bit better insight, perhaps, and also walk through some of the unique steps that we've had to take in the course of what's happened because of the closing of Wells College. That really has precipitated a great deal. So, the college, as you may or may not know, has been the source of providing water to the village of Aurora since the early 20th century, 1920s, somewhere in that range. They put up a water storage tank on the upper portion of the campus that is still being used today. It's right around 100 years old. And that system has been operating for essentially 100 years. The village, and this is, from what we understand, the only circumstance in New York State, purchases their water from the institution and has for decades and decades. So that situation is highly unusual. It typically would be the reverse. The water supply would be in the control of the municipality. But in this case, it's a flip side of that. So in my tenure of being involved with the village, which probably is approaching 12, 13 years, it has been always an uncertainty of the solvency and the continuation of this situation because I think it's common knowledge. Everybody knew Wells was struggling, and we certainly knew that the small liberal arts colleges throughout the country were having a difficult time. So there were various things that went back and forth early on for me of getting familiar and understanding this situation, working with the college occasionally, but mostly back then with Bonnie Bennett, the former mayor, and trying to navigate and figure out what's the best thing to do. But everything was out of our control since it was all owned and operated by Wells. Well, as you know, this past April, not as in 2 months ago, but 2024, at the very end of the month, just prior to the end of the school semester, the school announced their closure, and that was going to take effect immediately. The timing was obviously a significant shocker and gave no one any opportunity to prepare for this. So, from the village's standpoint, it was and has been a scramble. It was putting out fires left and right, figuring out, okay, what's next? We're dealing with public water and we need to address it ASAP. So, in the course of those subsequent months, as we were getting information, trying to get as much information from Wells, and they were losing staff and figuring out, okay, what's the present conditions? What do you have on the books? It was nothing but an investigation for most of last summer, trying to figure out just where does everybody stand, and also the legal questions that came with all of this, which was highly unique because New York State and everybody that we had interactions with said, never been down this road. There is no template of a public water supply being transferred from a private institution to the municipality. Long story short, through last summer was that we gathered information, and two critical pieces that came to light was one, they had already secured, Wells College that is, a $1 million grant from the Northern Borders Regional Commission, which would be federal money. And it was designated originally to look at upgrading, the filtration system and whatnot. And ultimately, based on the cost of things, it was really kind of redirected to really just be an in-kind replacement of the existing diatomaceous earth filters. They go back to the 60s. They were and literally on their last legs. Leaks, there was issues of uncertainty that basically the water supply in a very vulnerable position. So we had to figure out, how do we get control of that? Because at this point, it became very clear Wells was simply fading away, and their staff incrementally, month by month, was being diminished and released. And we got as much information as we could. And we ended up ultimately, for that Northern Borders grant, it did get transferred to the village of Aurora. Northern Borders, I will commend highly in their willingness to work with us, so that we can then pick up the ball and continue that, because it was halfway through. The other grant was a John Katko congressional directed spending grant, $200,000, to replace the pivotal main pumps that are in the water treatment plant, basically that pump it from the lake through the system, then up to the water tower. That one had not actually even gotten underway, and we had to pick that up as well. So this kind of information came to light, and as we got closer and approaching the fall, we had to start negotiating of what's really going to happen here, because Wells was saying, we're going away. We're not going to continue to operate. Who's going to take it over? There was much discussion, particularly with the health department, and it became obvious that the only logical thing, particularly at least in the immediate future right then, was that the village be the one to pick up the slack and pick up the ball and operate the plant. That got negotiated, and a license agreement was signed October 1st transfer of that operation from the Wells College people to the village. And what made the transition really easy was the fact that the two operators, who were employees and were obviously on the docket to be released, became village employees. So there was no change of personnel operating the plant, which was really a godsend. From there, we continued to negotiate and tried to sort out, what are we going to do going forward? And going forward, in the course of discussions, we had to do cost estimates of what's it going to cost to operate a water treatment plant. We had no experience in that, and there wasn't much information forthcoming from Wells College. They never tracked the cost of operating their water plant in a separate budgeting category. So we had no source of good information from them. We did some estimates, and as village engineer and in working with Barton and LaJudas, who had done the countywide report, they had familiarity with the village, and I had familiarity with some of their personnel, particularly Chris Lawton, one of the vice presidents. So we got them involved. They did some estimates. And over the course of the balance of last year, we started to really figure out that, okay, it really looks like we're going to make a decision here in the near future of considering two significant options. One, do we take over, and we can take over the operation of the plant, maintain control, have a significant increase in cost to the village, but that was one of the biggest hurdles we had to leap. The other option, and this goes back to the 2018 evaluations that were done when the village decided to, because at that point, Wells was going to stop operating and we had to take care of ourselves. We didn't know what the college was going to do. And we were going to do a new plant down at Long Point State Park. And so that was similar. But one of the other options was to connect to the Springport distribution system, because that was water sourced in Owasco Lake from the Auburn system and basically overseen by the Water and Sewer Authority of Cayuga County. We went back and forth. We had meetings. We did estimates. We talked to the board about control, the future, versus being able to, plus there was significant cost to even do that connection. That is about a 5-mile pipeline to connect from the Springport system just below Union Springs all the way down to the system in Aurora, and upgrades and other things had to be done. So the decision then this past spring was that everybody was on board, the village board in Aurora, to pursue the option of continuing to operate the plant. We talked quite a bit about what might be able to be other areas we could serve. The Inns of Aurora had already expanded into the town of Ledyard with their spa. They're finishing the improvements to, I think, a 6-unit hotel, which had been the former Bush farmhouse. And we see the future. They own quite a bit of property up there, that would continue to happen. And we are probably, most of you are aware of the Water and Sewer Authority and their intentions and desire to work with Honoco Road and, in fact, continue with the sewer system. It was not water, but a sewer system to pick up those properties all the way down possibly to the Tompkins County line, which would make the health department very happy. So all things considered, we decided to stick with operating the plant. We worked on new budgets for the sewer and the water plant because our sewer budget was also impacted by the closure of wells, in that we could no longer collect their sewer fees based on what they used for water. And here they obviously were winding down in terms of consumption. With those decisions now pretty well in hand, and again, Jim, as mayor, has been routinely coordinating with the Department of Health on a state level, as well as many other agencies at a state level, the attorney generals, because this is a complicated affair of closing a not-for-profit institution. And there hasn't been great movement from what we understand in terms of submissions of dissolution plans and all of these things that the college needs to do to fulfill what they need to do. So we have since, particularly this spring, been negotiating and formulating a document to purchase critical portions of the Wells water system. Because if we're going to continue to go forward with operating it, we clearly need to do significant upgrades. And the only way we can seek funding, be it loans, grants, but particularly we're targeting grants, would be to own the facility. We can't do it without that. So the negotiation to purchase basically the land and property in and around the water treatment plant down by the water, have an easement for both the transmission main going up to the tank and returning with the fresh water down through the campus, as well as purchasing approximately 1 acre of land up on top of the hill adjacent to the existing water storage tank, has all been something we've been all working on. We are almost at the finish line. We have a hang up still. We have not come to an agreement about a certain aspect of the purchase, in that there is a lease agreement included with this, because the boilers for heating the campus are located in the water treatment plant building. And that's a problem from a security standpoint. Physically, they occupy space we need and could use. Uh, and, I'm not going to get into the details, but that's become a hang up. And that's the one sticking point that has kept us from completing this purchase. So with that purchase going forward, I've given you the sort of the past, now the present, and here's the future we see. And the future initially is, and Bartlett and LaJudas and myself are literally in the midst of writing a new preliminary engineering report, which reflects just what I've been talking about. It gives the pre-existing conditions. It talks about all of the improvements we need to make and what we're going to do going forward. Without that, you cannot seek funding. So we're hoping that to complete that here shortly, because our funding opportunities that we'd like to get some of these initial applications in, because the WIO grant was just announced and is due September 20th. So we've got to get our homework done so we can do those applications and secure money. That's the bottom line here. Without getting significant grant dollars, we are really going to be in a pickle of making the significant improvements. What are those improvements? Here's the big ones. A new intake. Presently, the intake to the water treatment plant goes out 900 feet, which sounds great, but it only goes to a depth of about 20 feet. It is literally that shallow. Not a good situation from a health risk, and particularly for us to date, it has always been a turbidity issue that we have to deal with because of Paynes Creek nearby. So that's a number one item to get replaced. We probably have to go out about 3,000 feet into the lake based on the topographic contours of the bottom of the lake to get a depth of about, we're shooting for somewhere in the range of 100 feet. That gives us great assurance of water quality. It's below the thermocline, which I think in Cayuga Lake, if I recall correctly, is around 70, 75 feet. And it would be what we need to do. The second major upgrade would be the filtration system. We're doing an interim fix with those northern border dollars I mentioned earlier, replacing the diatomaceous earth filters because they're absolutely, on their last legs. And so we're getting new ones, but it is not the technology we need, not to protect us from emerging contaminants and other things that are probably coming down the road from federal health requirements, particularly for surface water. That's a significant one as well. A third major one is having to do with the water storage tank. The storage tank itself, again, being 100 years old, is in a location we would duplicate, hence why we're purchasing an acre. And in conjunction with that, we've had an issue of getting balanced pressures throughout the village. All of this water infrastructure that I'm describing, if you have any familiarity with Aurora, is at the south end. We have a tank that was erected back in the 80s at the north end on the upper levels of Sherwood Road, but because of hydraulic losses of the distance, it doesn't fill to the same elevation based on the daily replenishment of water to the wells tank. So we're deficient. We're definitely a little low up there. We want to include with our new tank basically a 1 mile, 5,000 foot water main that would connect the new tank at the Wells campus to our existing tank on Sherwood Road and basically loop our system to have a much more balanced flow. And from a firefighting standpoint and every regard, we'll have so much more flexibility in operating a public water supply. So those are the primary big things. I think I've probably talked enough to bore you with information. And I know it was kind of from an engineering standpoint, but it is certainly the hot topic and has been the focus for the village. And I'll just ask Jim if there's any other aspect of beyond what I have spoken about that he would want to add to what I've said or anything related.
Not really. I think, Ken, I can't believe you summarized everything we've done in 14 months in the last 20 minutes. I believe that because it was quite a job on your part, but probably not gotten this far, quite honestly. And we have established through all of this, and there's some other sidebar aside from the water that we've gone through with Wells College. They simply have been able to figure out, close account, New York State. I call them my H, EFC, all of those people. But in the course of all this, we have established really good contacts. And I feel going forward, we're going to be okay. We're in about a 2-year dip. And once we start getting development at the other end of the village, adding water users, sewer users, and all of that, I really feel we'll be starting on that road to success. Right now, we are in the bottom of the valley, and Ken is certainly navigating us through. I just wanted to emphasize it's been an extremely difficult and somewhat unexpected process. So thank you, Ken. Thank you all for being patient.
Yeah, let's take a couple questions now, and then we'll let Rob Thurston speak, and then we can ask questions at the end as well. Tony DePlato, you have a question?
Yeah, yeah, Ken, Jim, thanks for your report. I'm curious about whether or what the Hiawatha Initiative role, if anything, at this point in the Wells College property.
That probably is maybe better addressed by Jim
Yep.
as to that whole situation. But
Yep.
So go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. I'll just tell you that I met personally, it took a while, but I met personally with the Attorney General's office in Syracuse, Ed Thompson and Tom Drum. We addressed, there was 9 bids from what I understand, and none of them were viable to the Attorney General. And I think specifically with Hiawatha, and I do not want to speak out of turn, but I did meet with one of the issues was the funding could be just an
Jim?
absolutely end all wonderful. Yes.
Let me break in. You're cutting out a lot. Maybe
Really?
maybe try to turn your video off and see if it gives you a little bit more power. So if you
Well,
could go back.
that'll probably be more pleasing to you. So,
Yeah. Could you go back to what you're saying about you said the 9 bids, none viable, and then
yeah, I think there was. Is this okay now?
it seems better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was 9 bids, and none of them were viable to the Attorney General for a variety of reasons. I believe that particular one was relying heavily on state and federal grants, which we all know can't sustain any business for more than a year or two. I think that was a real issue with them. I do know they had a good public relations campaign, and it did sound good. It sounded like it was the end all, but it simply didn't come out correctly in the eyes of the Attorney General, and quite frankly, with us. So that's where we are with that.
All right.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone have another question before? Yes, go ahead, Kent.
So the Wells property continues to be on the market. Is that what I understand?
Correct.
So
It's
go ahead.
yeah, no, it's on the market.
My other question is, so once you're up and running with your water treatment facility, you'll be selling water back to the wells owner?
Correct. It would be reversed. We would now be the owner operator of the public water supply, and they would become whoever on that campus property a customer. Correct.
Okay, well, I have a few questions, but I'm gonna hold them till the end. Are you both able to stay on for a little bit longer?
I am unfortunately, Ann, I think is coming on. I
Ann
am
is here, yeah.
unfortunately, okay, good. I am heading off to another commitment. Sorry. This is
And
just the nature of the beast these days.
I very much appreciate your
But if
time.
you have another question for me, please let me know now. I'd be glad to, if I can address it, I would.
Well, so I was gonna ask about, so your source water is Cayuga Lake,
Hmm?
and are you concerned about, do you have problems with HABs with your current intake?
Oh, well, not in the intake, but they're there and we are in that season. Especially with this weather. Yes. We're
And
very
then,
concerned.
Roxy, we
Yeah.
had carbon filters installed a few years back.
That's right. You had told me that. I
Yep.
knew
Yeah.
that. Okay, so that's
I am.
handles that.
Hi.
And do you have processed water that you have to discharge? Your treatment water? Not your treat ed, but your, when you remove the solids?
You mean at
In our,
go ahead, Ken.
are you talking wastewater or are you talking the
So
water treatment
it's the
system?
wastewater from your drinking water treatment system.
Right. We have a slurry tank because the only real waste we have goes through with the slurry tank because of the diatomaceous earth when you have to replenish the DE. And that has a weir and is removed to a tank outside. And then as it builds up, it is hauled away. Yep. And the
Um,
other portions of it go to the wastewater treatment system.
Oh, okay, okay. That's pretty much what we do too. And then the last question I had was, you mentioned that in the interim you were just replacing the DE filters, but what is the long-term plan for
The
filtration?
long-term plan would be part of that description of upgrading the entire treatment scheme, and that would include a much more highly sophisticated filtration, which would be some sort of membrane system. There's lots
Okay.
of different technologies out there, but that seems to be where the health department, and from what Barton and LaJudas says, who has more experience with this than I, it seems to be the direction to go, particularly since we can then have it be in a more modular setup
Yeah.
so that as we increase our customer base, and need to upgrade our flows, we can do so as well, staying with the same system, same
Yep.
type of system.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are my questions. Yeah, thank you again, Jim. We'll let you go.
Okay.
We might kidnap you again in a future meeting, but we'll let you go
No
tonight.
problem. No problem. I'm always happy to attend these. These are very useful and I think informative, necessary. Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate
you.
that.
Yep. Thanks, Ann, for coming on.
Yep.
Okay.
So Rob, thank you for waiting patiently through all that. Want to turn it over
Roxy,
to you? Yes, yes.
can I interrupt? This is Ken again.
Of course.
This was kind of a last minute thing for me to join in and
Okay.
participate. And I too, I guess, would prefer if I could step out of the meeting at this point.
Okay, sure.
So we can make one last query to your other participants. If anyone has any questions for me now, and certainly if something comes up that you realize later, you can always reach out to Ann, the clerk. She and I talk about 5 times a day, and she can pass on anything and I can get back to whomever. Okay?
Does anyone else have any questions for Ken before he goes? I have one more for you then. So will there be an opportunity as you do upgrades to the distribution system to do anything with your stormwater system? Or
Tell you the truth, it has been so focused on the water supply, I cannot really answer that accurately. And maybe Ann has a sense. I know there's been improvements or things, have changed when they reconstructed Court Street and whatnot, but I really don't, I haven't been involved in that kind of conversation, even though it would seem like I should. I don't think much has happened in that arena. Ann, am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, the last year has just been water, 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 other than replacing the generator at the wastewater treatment plant.
along the same lines, would there be opportunities to deal with any inflow infiltration on wastewater collection lines?
There has not been a program developed, that was implemented. We haven't sought funding. One of the things that has been an odd sort of sidebar is the Water and Sewer Authority's intentions to do the Honoco Road project. It has come and gone in a couple of different levels of what appears to be, implementation. And now it seems to be back more in the forefront. And part of that is the upgrades to our sewer system. So particularly the wastewater treatment plant, because it's recognized that we are in need of doing an upgrade. And that is part of that package that they're looking to include in their improvement project. I suspect in conjunction with that, we will probably need to take a harder look at our I&I situation. But right now, it's not that problematic because we could use as much sewage as we possibly could. Now having lost wells, we need more flow. And so the Honoco project, if that really becomes and comes to a reality, would be great for us because it would really help us. We need bugs in our wastewater.
Got you. Thank you very much again, Ken, for that presentation. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Take care. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, Rob, on to Union Springs and whatever exciting things you might have going on. I know you had a waterfront revitalization grant, I believe, and maybe you have some other things going on to share with us.
Yeah, my report will be kind of brief, and I apologize in advance if you hear a bunch of road noise. I'm traveling back from a work trip I had to attend, but things in the village are pretty active and busy. We had our ADA kayak launch that was installed, and we completed the installation with a accessible paved asphalt walkway to get out to the new kayak launch in Frontenac Park. And of course, we're looking at making additional improvements with traffic flow and such with the DRI grant funding, and also to do some rehabilitation to our Rotosol property that the village purchased several years ago that is a part of Frontenac Park or adjoins Frontenac Park. In regards to drinking water, the village remains in a good situation. We are as well dealing with a very old system. Our team is working diligently, and we have shifted our focus, and we've been putting a lot of work into maintaining our critical infrastructure that has needed some updating over the past several years, but we're shifting our focus and making sure that those updates are happening on a regular basis. And our water report's available online for anyone who's interested through the village website. And, we continue to deal with challenges with PRV pits, maintaining pressure sometimes, and always trying to make those upgrades so we have the best system and most reliable systems to our residents. Our wastewater treatment plant, the village of Union Springs is in the process of design. We are doing a very large upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant, which is also going to include a new anaerobic digester to make the plant more efficient, and also to replace a lot of the components that are existing and aging significantly at the plant. The plant was built in the 1980s and has had very little work done to it. And one of my latest focus has been as well because of low pressure pumps pumping into the village system as we supply support for the town of Springport for neighboring properties. You know, we have been working to rehab manholes, especially on the ends of the village where they connect into the town system, to address corrosion and stuff and infiltration water into our wastewater treatment system. So, you know, we are very busy. You know, we were pretty ecstatic. We rehabbed, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but 11 manholes this spring with a contractor, which included our final process was we actually epoxied the inside of our manholes that were rebuilt to extend their life even further because of the cost. And since the resources were already in place, why not take advantage of it and pay a little bit more money? So, you know, that is pretty much where the Village of Union Springs is currently with wastewater and Frontenac Park and drinking water. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask away, I suppose.
Questions? It sounds like you're in good shape, so things are moving smoother there, and really good that you're staying on top of the regular maintenance. I'm thinking of our own system here in the city of Ithaca. I should turn the recording off. Sometimes we're a little behind on that. Do you have any issues with stormwater or localized flooding?
I don't think we've had localized flooding. There was a recent event outside of the village in the town of Springport. It was a creek which had an ice jam back up. I would say for the most part, the village has no flooding issues within, and if there are, they haven't happened in the past several years since the culvert repairs that were completed under New York State Route 90 near Gillespie Chevrolet.
Oh, nice, nice. So they were upsized? Is that what they did?
I believe they were increased in size and completely rebuilt, and sections were redone underneath and then on the forward and backside of those culverts, is my understanding.
Very good. Well, sounds like you guys are in great shape. I'm happy for you and happy to hear that. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, Rob. Well, we will let you go back to driving more safely and not have to participate in the meeting at the same time. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yep. Have a great night.
Thank you.